talk a lot about data, big data, behavioral data, emotional data, but behind every elegant chart or interactive dashboard is something messier: the struggle to build a system that can even make the data possible. What does it take to measure emotion, not in a lab, but across thousands of people, in real time, across years? In this segment, we follow Dr. Karin Coifman's journey to answer that question and reveal just how unprepared most of our tools are for the reality of human behavior. At Kent State University, Coifman is helping run one of the largest emotion-focused cohort studies in the country. It's called the Student Life Study, and its goal is simple: track the emotional lives of undergraduates as they move into and out of college. But simple doesn't mean easy.
We also have this other enormous project happening in my lab and in collaboration with another faculty member in the department here, John Gunstad, which is the Kent State Student Life Study, which is in a huge cohort study. So a cohort study meaning we're trying to understand a large population-based kind of group of individuals. And in this case, it's undergraduate students who are coming to Kent State. And we have about 2,500 participants in the study right now. And the goal is to get to 10,000 students. This is a large institution, so we got a lot of students here. And it's really to really understand better the transition both into college, the college experience, and then the transition out of college. And there's a lot of really important reasons why we're doing this right now. College students today are a pretty unique population in that they have been raised within the context of lots of new challenges that we don't really understand. Technology being one of them, social media being a big part of that. And there's lots of protective features of technology and social media, and there's probably some problematic ones as well, but we don't really understand that. So that's one important issue why college students today are really quite different. But also we're living in a different kind of a world today, and college campuses are being asked to do different kinds of things today, and college students today are reporting the highest levels of mental health disruptions that really in history. And so there's a lot of reasons why we need to understand what's going on better. And this particular time period is a really important time to do that, because this period of time in college is emerging adulthood. This is when people are kind of taking on their adult identities, their habits, all kinds of things that impact health, physical health, and mental health over the whole lifespan. And so it's really important to understand what's going on, both in terms of identifying where things are going wrong, but also in terms of kind of supporting when things are going right, and the development of healthy habits and all kinds of things that can change the trajectory of a person's life. So that's a huge project, and that we're 2 years in, and we're hoping it will go on and on and on and on and on forever. It'll outlive me. That's the goal. A lot of the challenges of a project like this have to do with infrastructure and managing such a large population of people where you ask them to do all different kinds of things. And some of the challenges we have right now have to do with resources that we were, for example, anticipating certain types of federal grant monies being available that may or may not be available in the same way anymore. Universities have more budgetary constraints today than they really have had in recent years. And so that's another challenge. And so some of it has to do with just resources. We just need to make sure that we have the right amount of resources, and the costs attached to the project just increase, right? The more people you have, the more costs. And that's a real challenge.
Most research studies start with tools already built, but Coifman's team, they're building the plane mid-flight, designing systems for a kind of emotional tracking that's never been done at this scale.
And then the other challenge is actually like a logistical technology challenge, which is that we are essentially building the road for managing such a large scale data set in the contemporary technology way as we go. And so some of it is that we just don't always know what we need. And so we're by design going slowly, right?
The problems aren't just academic. They're deeply human. How do you communicate with thousands of students? Without breaking privacy law? How do you text 2,400 people at once without sounding like spam?
For example, even simple things like sending text messages to 2,400 people at a time within a research context has a lot of constraints, right? We're not a commercial entity. We have all of these extra privacy concerns in research that don't exist in other domains. And so we have to be really careful how we go about communicating with our population, asking them to do things, all kinds of things. And so a lot of it is that we just don't have the tools yet, and we're actually creating them as
So
we
why
go.
do it? Why wrestle with the weight of technology, compliance, and logistical chaos just to gather feelings 5 times a day? Because emotion, real, lived emotion, is hard to fake and even harder to understand. If we want to learn how stress works, how loneliness grows, or how people make decisions when they're vulnerable, we need better systems. We think of science as driven by answers, but often it's driven by tools, what we can measure, model, or simulate. And right now, emotion science is reaching past the limits of what most systems were designed to hold. Every time we scroll through a clean-looking graph or hear a podcast talk about the data, it's easy to forget the mess behind the scenes, the duct tape, the servers, the missing grant funding, the emails that never get answered. But that's the work. That's the real science, not just asking good questions, but building the tools to answer them.